military base. Here is the latest on the Fort Hood shooting. 4 people are dead, including the gunman. 16 others wounded, 3 of them critically at this hour. The shooter has been identified as an Army specialist and an Iraq vet who was being treated for mental health problems. Now, that part of the story is a little unclear, and we'll unpack it later in the show. We'll have more on the shooter and that background and a possible motive later. But let's get to Fort Hood, Texas. George Howell standing by with the very latest on what happened. George.
Chris, good morning. We are still gathering information about the timeline. What we know at this point, this was a shooting spree that took place in multiple locations on base. People were told to shelter in place. This Fort Hood, the size of a city, was put on lockdown as folks were forced to undergo yet another traumatic mass shooting.
We have an active shooter currently on Fort Hood, so we have multiple gunshot victims. We also have people that are escaping through windows.
Tragedy strikes again. The Army's largest U.S. base put on lockdown for hours as shots rang out Wednesday. The second deadliest shooting on the Fort Hood military base in Texas in nearly 5 years.
It's really unreal, really unreal, because in 2009 I was here, and this thing happened again.
Authorities scrambled to the scene, shutting the front gates, backing up traffic, urging everyone to stay put. The lone shooter identified as Specialist Ivan Lopez, an American soldier toting a .45 caliber Smith & Wesson semi-automatic handgun purchased recently.
He was undergoing behavioral health and psychiatric treatment for depression and anxiety, and a variety of other psychological and psychiatric issues.
Dressed in combat fatigues, Lopez allegedly opened fire, killing 3 people and injuring more than a dozen before taking his own life after being confronted by a military police officer.
It was clearly heroic, what she did at that moment in time, and she did her job, and she did exactly what we would expect of a United States Army military police.
Victims were airlifted to nearby hospitals.
Any shooting is trouble. Obviously, this reopens the pain of what happened at Fort Hood 5 years ago.
Fort Hood, the site of so much pain in 2009 when Major Nidal Hasan opened fire on base, killing 13 people and injuring 32. President Obama's touching words on the events of that tragic day almost 5 years ago, sadly relevant again.
So we say goodbye to those who now belong to eternity. May God bless the memory of those that we have lost.
So this happened between 2 buildings here on base, the medical building and the transportation building. We understand that Lopez went into one building, opened fire, then got into his vehicle, fired shots from the vehicle, then went to the second building, opened fire until he was confronted by a military officer using his own weapon, turning it on himself to kill himself. Michaela.